I wanted to now move on to talk to you about one of your other hats, the many-hatted man. Yeah, was it Ernie Farrant at Haringey used to be the many-hatted man? Again, a bit before your time.
I was going to say, Floyd, you're going back now. I'm under 50.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you, Toaster. The announcement yesterday, of the sponsorship of MatchBet for the Maiden Derby,
yep.
Increased prize money, new sponsor. Can only be good news.
Yeah, no, delighted. I mean, obviously, to be fair, we've been talking for probably 4 or 5 months to MatchBook, and they want to see how the St. Ledger at Limerick did for them last year. They've recently announced that they were going to do it again at Limerick this year, so I think that worked really well for them with the greyhound community. So we've managed to persuade them to come on board, and I think the Maiden Derby would be really, really good for them because obviously it was won by Thorn Falcon last year. It will be a great springboard for the Derby. So hopefully they'll get plenty of coverage from it. They'll get lots of new customers. I think they're going to be sort of offering sort of the markets on the Maiden Derby. So hopefully the UK side of things, we can get them a few more accounts open and they stay in sponsorship in the UK.
Okay. Now, I gather there's two aspects to this. So first, I wanted to ask you about any other competitions that you've got coming up at any of the tracks. Obviously, Oxford, or hopefully we're only a month, 6 weeks away from seeing the first trialists. What can you tell me about provisional plans for the tracks? Because you can't just drop open races on people at the drop of a hat and say, "Oh, we want to fill a puppy competition next week."
Yeah, well, we've what we've done. We've had a little bit of a move around. The Hunt Cup at Toaster was in November last year. We brought that forward to October, and we've worked quite well actually with Sheffield, and Andrew up there has been brilliant. Our first, because we wanted to put another puppy competition in later on in the year, and I saw the article in the Greyhound Star where he was looking at a puppy competition October, November time. We had a BGBF puppy cup in October. So we spoke to him and said, when do you really want it? He wanted October. So we're going to move the BGF Puppy Cup to Oxford when it opens. I think for pups it's over 450, it will be a better prospect of a race there. So I said to Andrew, you take the October slot, if we can take the November slot. And, we work quite well together, and, we'll be putting hopefully get that announced within the next month or so.
Okay. Now, you, for your previous sins, were on the Open Race Planning Committee. It is an organisation that I get a little bit irritated with. To be honest, less so. I think they've really tried a lot harder than they used to. I think there was this great attitude of, no, you can't run this. Do you think it's feasible, particularly given the proliferation now of the major competitions? Do you think it's reasonable that they should intervene, or should it be pretty much a free-for-all?
It is a tricky one, because I do think the calendar needs some structure. What I would say is, having been on the outside, I mean, I wanted to get back onto the Open Race Planning Committee. I think, to be fair, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I have a vast knowledge of open racing and how competitions work. And I don't want to be blinkered to say, oh, this track, that, I only want that to work. You want the whole calendar to work for everybody, for the trainers and for the owners. We all need to work together. Like that example we've just, Toaster and Sheffield, we've just shown, you work together. But I think there's what confuses me now is when I wanted to go back onto the Open Race Planning Committee, I wasn't allowed. And the reason being was because Kevin Boothby at Toaster wasn't a member of the Racecourse Promoters Association, which confused me, because for me, it was always the committee was run by the GBGB. So, where should the committee lie? If, you might make the argument that there shouldn't be a committee, but whose control should it be under? If the GBGB are doing the calendar, should it be under the GBGB control? I think there is a debate there.
But you've got to have a debate as long as you've got commercial rivals and only one of them represented or one side represented on the board. That can't be in the public interest or the greyhound public interest, particularly if you get a situation where you say, well, we want to put on a 50 grand competition, and somebody from Arc or Entain says, well, no, we've got that slot, you know, and you're not going to get it past the open race committee. I don't think it's ever happened, so I'm not being deliberately perverse or difficult here, but that would be a consideration, and to a certain extent, I don't think it doesn't necessarily does them any favors, because even if they are playing a straight bat and saying, no, that, you know, you can't have that slot or you can't have another slot, there will be the suspicion of bias even when it's just good planning.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I would like to think all tracks could work together. I hear what you say about representation on there. You know, it may be hard for the GBGB. You know, Amanda Duplac, who was running that, has since left. Tom Huntley, who was then sort of helping out on that, has since left. I don't really know who at the GB, you know, because I sort of messaged Mark Bird to say, right, who do I speak to? You know, I want to put this race in. Some of it might be commercially sensitive, so you know, I would normally in the past have done let Amanda know, but now who do I let know? And it is a difficult one, and you know, and I hope the whole industry can work together and put aside any sort of factions. But you know, I think time will tell, because just getting back onto what we're doing at the tracks, technically we can't put any races into Oxford yet because it hasn't got a license. But I know I'm sitting on about 8 Cat 1 races to put into Oxford. You know, Oxford's been amazing. You know, we've got sponsors left, right, and centre wanting to sponsor there. You know, they you know, they want to bring back the Pall Mall. We want to, you know, do lots of different races there. I've got them all lined up and listed, but I can't submit them because Oxford doesn't have a license. Understandably so, you know, we can't put them in yet. So, you know, that's why we're hoping by the end of April we can sort of do the license application at Oxford and then submit these, because it, you know, I must have spent hours trawling through the calendar to say, right, that race will be best there, or this race will be best there, and it doesn't clash with that, you know. And you know, when we moved the Hunt Cup from November to October, we had to look, you know, we didn't want to clash with the St. Leger, which is September, and it probably helped Crayford a little bit because we moved further away from the Cesarewitch towards the end of the year. You know, and it's just making sense and being sensible.
Okay, I mean, just kind of part of my perverse nature. Okay, so if you had a choice, you're excuse me, you're given control of it. What do you do? How do you operate it? Because it, you know, it's all very well for people on the outside to have a pot, and we're all guilty of that. How do you make it work?
I don't think that's easily answered, if I'm honest. Now, I know you said earlier on, have a free-for-all. You know, at the end of the day, if we are increasing the number of Category 1 races and competitions, then maybe a free-for-all is the only route, and then trainers can choose the best route for their dog and the best distance for their dog. The only downside to that is, you know, you could be right up against each other's throats at different tracks for a similar sort of dogs, and the competitions don't fill. And you commercially and racing wise, you won't want to do that yourself. So there does need to be an element of working together. But when you have a free for all, you don't work. You know, you're between a rock and a hard place. If I'm honest.
Do you not think though that things have evolved? I mean, I was chatting to Rad McNair a little while ago, and he went up to Newcastle, took his beating in the final with a puppy competition, but said, you know, he won't be going back simply for the reason that he's travelling from Kent all the way to Newcastle 3 or 4 times, plus trials for where they're necessary now for these tracks. Does it really matter if you have 2 puppy derbies taking place, one in the northeast and one at I don't know, at Toaster or one at Central Park?
I guess not. I guess not. But is there enough dogs or puppies, whatever it may be, in the country to fill those races? You could have a scenario whereby 6 tracks decide to put a puppy competition on in the same month, you know, and that would just be stupidity. But if you haven't got a framework, I guess, how do you know what the other tracks are doing?
How about a halfway measure whereby you say to the tracks at the beginning of the year, commit to X amount, or perhaps even, to be fair to some of the smaller tracks, Yarmouth may not be able to come up with a 20 grand competition, if they, dependent on the level of a sponsor, as an example, but they may say, well, you know, we want our traditional shot for the Yarmouth Derby at the end of August, beginning of September. You say to Crayford, you know, yes, you've got the golden jacket. Yes, you give each of the tracks their own slot, or perhaps at least one each. And then you then start to say, right, well, let's have a bidding process now for the other slots.
Yeah, so you know, that could work. I've never known, you know, in all the years sort of on the open race plan, why it always took so long to get a calendar out. You know, the Irish have theirs out in November for the following year. You know, we can do that, but the tracks have to commit going forward. So I believe if you sort of falter on that, you lose your slot and somebody else can have that.
I think so. I mean, to be fair to Amanda, she did her best, but I think she was basically too nice. And had I been doing the situation, I'd have said, no, that's your slot, like it or lump it. If you don't want to lump it, we'll give it to somebody else. But Amanda tried to appease everybody. And I'm not necessarily sure that when we're dealing with some of the promoters in particular, that was necessarily the easiest way to get the job done. But if it was that simple, we would have the solution.
Well, I know, and I think you're right, Floyd. It isn't a simple solution, and I think it would take the tracks sit down and sort of talk it through with the GBGB and you know, come up with a new solution maybe, because it can be pragmatic, problematic, you know, just going through the processes.